welcome. I'm Mendy Stoll with the Seat Suite, and I have Tommy Aoki from SkyShare here from with us today. I'm so excited. He and I had a conversation before, and I had a chance to learn a little bit, and I can't wait for you guys to hear. Tommy, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about you, and I thought it was so interesting your background and how you ended up in private aviation.
Yeah. So without trying to make that a little bit of a shorter story, I actually spent about 18 years prior in actually the mobile space, the wireless sales industry. I worked for decades with AT&T and Apple. So that really has nothing to do with my career except for understanding how to run different business models as being a larger reseller for Apple and the largest in the country for AT&T as well. Those are similar product sets, but in the end, I learned a lot about how to run a business, margin control, expense management, operations, efficiencies. And so that's really what kind of parlayed that experience into other things I've done in between. And how I got into aviation was a longtime friend, a sixth grade friend, actually. So going back a good 35 plus years, my friend and now CEO and founder, Corey Benson, contacted me in 2019 after he'd been already started the business in 2009 as a brokerage. And so he was buying and selling planes, and he had this new idea, which he already started, but it wasn't really up and going, which was the fractional program that he launched in 2017, 18, and then obviously contacted me in 2019. He actually contacted me and said, "Hey, this is growing. I think I'm onto something, but I can't run it like I've been running my brokerage. I need someone I can trust and to run all the finances and all the operations. I need more time to do what he does best, which is sell a product that he loves and something that he loves to do." So anyway, I got into it that way. I got into it as the company didn't have the finances to pay me anything at the time, and I was already working as a chief revenue officer for a wireless company in the Northeast, and decided I could do some stuff on the side. So I started helping part time, pretty much on the weekends and in the afternoon hours, and then I started to get to know his leadership team at the time. He knew that I've ran, multiple companies that had hundreds, if not thousands of employees at certain points. I ran payroll, I ran all labor. And so that was something that he really needed because that's not an area he likes to play in. He's a visionary. He doesn't worry about the detail. It's more vision and where he wants to go. I decided I would help part time. The pandemic hits in March of 2020. The business, like all aviation did, and like most companies, it pretty much went to a complete stall from pretty much March until probably around June. And we were like every other company. We were trying to figure out, and I was helping just, kind of, I wouldn't call it part time, but part to full time, how to keep the company's doors open and how to survive till the next pay cycle until we could get into an opportunity. And then around June, the travel industry started opening up again, which we all experienced. And with that, as we were still trying to figure out how do you sterilize planes, how do you sterilize all the passenger stuff, how do you touch all the baggage, and through all of that, we had to figure out ways to not only fine tune service, but execution, and then do it in a time that nobody knew what to do. And through that process, I think I got to know not only the employees that were currently there and where it could go, but I had a shared vision for aviation, slightly different than his, but we have a good common ground and we decided, hey, we can grow this thing. What do we want to do? What do we want it to look like? And so I decided in October, he said, hey, it's growing. I need you to come on full time. I was in that point in my life where I've done a lot of good other companies and some acquisition stuff that's happened. I sold my old company as well about 10 years ago. And so I had an opportunity to make a career change and do something that I hadn't done before because I wanted to test myself on, can you apply all these other businesses that I've done, including scuba diving gear and wireless sales and my own company, and can I apply that to something totally different? And I saw the challenge and it was exciting. And I partnered up effective in 2020, and the rest is history. So that's pretty much how it came about. I do come from a family of aviators, I guess you'd call it. My uncle, which is my first private flight when I was about 12, took us out to California in his little Cessna. He eventually, about 3 years ago, retired from United after 35 years. So that started that. Then my younger brother, which is about a year and a half younger than me, he actually learned to fly and was part of teaching Corey to fly, my partner, because he is a private pilot. Used to work for SkyWest and Delta. Now he's a private pilot for a local family here in Utah. And my dad also owns some hangars and some smaller bush planes, a mall, some other things. So they've all played in it. I've been around it, but me personally, this is my first full-time gig in the aviation space.
You definitely have a great skill set.
Good.
Okay, so let me ask you about, what makes we had an interesting conversation about SkyShare. What makes it different?
Yeah. So, when you get into the actual, you wouldn't recognize it because, again, most people, most of the 350 million people in the US aren't consumers of private aviation. Unless I mean, everybody's interested in planes and everybody has flown commercially. But when you get into the space, it's actually really fragmented. And so it's said to be over 1,000 charter brokers out there. There's dozens of operators that operate one certificate and maybe like one airplane on their certificate. And so it's really hard, one, because they aren't common. It's not like a car where everybody has some common knowledge of it. A piston plane versus a turboprop versus a light jet versus all those are very different. And so what we found was most of the programs that were built, they were built for the premium consumer, the ultra high net worth individuals. And I mean ultra high net worth individuals, those that spend millions of dollars a year on private travel. And that was a specific program that everybody was after. And that's where NetJets, after a 30-year run, they've had their struggles as well, kind of found a product set that they knew people wanted because whole ownership is a completely different deal. It's not that it can't be done. It's just more complicated than what people think. You don't get into a plane and just fly it, or you don't get some pilot off the street. They just come and jump in a plane of $30 million and just hope for the best, right? Like there's so much operationally that has to happen into it. And so when we looked at that, there's those segments that were already there. And so obviously, who are we? We're not Berkshire Hathaway backed NetJets. We can't go in and buy $70 million aircrafts. One isn't going to get it done. You needed two or three to start your program. And so we started looking at different ways to say there has to be a better way and a lot bigger segment of the addressable market that is in that they do well, right? You're not flying private cheap. It's never going to be cheaper than a commercial option. But there's a big segment that have good small businesses, medium-sized businesses. They've had exits. They're older in retirement. They don't want to deal with a plane and pilots and training and maintenance. And can you bring that down to where it's not just like this big nugget, $1, $2, $3, $4 million a year? So Corey and I agreed when we were early on. I'm saying, what's your vision for it? And everybody wants to go, I want to go bigger. I want to go new. And to be honest with you, if we had $100 million to start of seed funding, we probably would have done it a little bit differently. But we weren't. So Corey and I have never taken outside funding for any portion of the business. So it has been bootstrapped together as bootstrapped as you could kind of call it, right? Take some creative financing sometimes and some really good partners along the way that have started with us and believed in us and helped us buy our first plane as a partner. And then we've just kind of parlayed it into stuff like that. And so going back to the question is we knew that there was a lot bigger market that was in the turboprops, the turboprops and the light jets, and specifically in the Rocky Mountain region and the West region that's largely unserved. Now, obviously, if you go to areas like Scottsdale or Vegas or the West Coast in its entirety, and I mean by West Coast, really California, because the Northwest is a really difficult place for operators to go as well, because it's too far outside the general, travel perimeters. So when we saw that, we said, hey, let's find something. There's a lot of consumers. Utah's a booming economy. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of people during the pandemic that were moving from California to Utah to Idaho. And they're like, and they need to get back. Sometimes they permanently resided somewhere else. And often they just bought a second home and they were utilizing that. And so then you saw a lot of travel for 21, 22, 23, when the pandemic was still partially in its existence. People were traveling for remote work. They were traveling back to, let's just say, from California to Colorado, to their home in Colorado for months at a time. And commercial aviation was limited at the time. The flights were limited. Some people felt it was super unsafe. There was cancellation. There's all the normal stuff that's happening. And they started saying, there's got to be an audience that wants a product set that doesn't cost them millions of dollars, that gives them the same service and the same freedom that they'd pay for something else, but that is really focusing on the Western-based client. And so that started with our PSA. So that was the first differentiators. We are the only, not the only, we in this PSA, our primary service area, our 10 Western states, we're the largest operator, both fractional and one of the largest for retail in the West. And to do that, that maintains our pricing strategy to offer a lower price to people. Like if you're another operator and you need to use us for supplemental lift, if they have a plane that breaks down or they're overbooked and they're anywhere in the Utah, Nevada, Idaho area, we're the first call because they can't position a plane for less money or in the time that they need faster than we can. So we become an automatic go-to for some of the larger providers. And for our consumer, it makes it super efficient for us because about 70% of our owners right now are Utah based. The other 30% are the other 10 Western states. Mainly, I'll call it Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, and California, Southern California. And so by doing that, that keeps our planes in a tight footprint. So our repositioning costs are always less. Our ability to move is equally as fast without having 4 times the size of fleet. And that is the first thing to pricing. So that's the first thing is the PSA. The second thing was our airplane options. It was to be able to have a PC-12, a turboprop, which is what we always say is the Land Rover of the skies. It's the most economical. It's the safest aircraft ever made. It's just a tremendous aircraft, and it's perfect for a 2.5 hour radius. You can go up to 5. We fly it down from Salt Lake to Cabo nonstop all the time. But a really common flight is anywhere in that 10 Western states. The PC-12 is super efficient, super safe, and you can get into 5,000 plus runways anywhere in basically in the country. So for your personal, your ranch, your golf outing, your business, we can probably drop you close to within 20 to 30 minutes of anywhere in the entire Western United States. And so that then stimulated both aircraft options to give a program that people could float around without having to buy multiple shares or a jet card and a fractional share or all these things to try to make it work. Could we offer a program that everybody could benefit from regardless of their travel or their itinerary? So that was number two. And then number three was by using used aircraft. Just like cars, the depreciation of an aircraft happens as soon as you take that thing off and you're losing 5%. And that's not 5% on $50,000 car. That's 5% on 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 million for the newer planes, right? Plus. And so if you could do that, and you get rid of the depreciation of the first 5 or 10 years when it depreciates the fastest, then they kind of hold all on those schedules. You know, when you fly in most aircraft with commercially, you're flying in a 20 to 30 year plus old aircraft. It's just been refurbed multiple times, right? You know, when you get in a brand new one, that's, let's call it brand new, meaning 2 or 3 years old, because it feels new. It's got newer tech package. It's got newer things, LED lighting down the hallways versus the old, single bulb things. And so that's very similar. The airlines don't do it any different. They have to put new stuff in because that things eventually cycle out. But as long as we stay in a type, most aircraft types, like if you're in a PC-12 or you're in a Citation XL or a CJ, from CJ1 or 2 to CJ4, there's like a 20-year span. Same thing with Citation XLs. And though the plane gets a little bit more efficient and it gets a little nicer, they might change some things, mostly up in the cockpit, avionics, other things that the passenger experience and the safety rating of them when you're an operator like us at 135 is the same. If it wasn't if it wasn't as safe, they wouldn't fly a plane that's 30 years old commercially that you're getting in every day, right? It has to be as safe. And so if we can give the same experience and bring the purchase price down to a fractional owner, because they're not timeshare, they're buying a fraction of an aircraft. They're on title legally, technically on title, then we could bring that price down in half. We can keep our PSA smaller and we can offer more options. We figured that was the winning combination to why don't more people do it? Well, and there's a lot trying and a lot that have done well and some that have tried and failed. But we feel really fortunate that we've got a group of people that can validate the product set. They can validate not only the brand, but our execution of the delivery to our customer. 99% we over the last 3 years in fulfilling owner flights. Sometimes there's things you can't avoid, right? You're somewhere, aircraft breaks down, you can't get a plane up there in 2 or 3 hours, weather, that happens. We're 99% uplift. We are focused heavily on providing the safest aircraft possible. And we are really focused on the customer experience, doing things like the Masters or the Preakness, or doing things that we decorate the planes. We bake cakes from our own kitchens. We do cupcake. We do all these things that I think make things different, that I think as a combination gives us a slightly different spin in some ways and a completely different spin than others in general on the fractional ownership position in general.
And I know you have other we really talked about 3 points in the business, and so, if let's say I'm new to flying privately, you had such a good analogy, I think, for the listener to understand why if somebody's never flown privately, maybe they had a liquidity event and they're starting to think about that. Why would I do that? Because I think people sort of feel that it feels luxurious, and to some extent it is, but I think it goes much deeper than that. So why do people choose to
Yeah.
fly privately?
Yeah, I think let's take a couple examples. Let's use the liquidity event as that is probably 30 to 40% of our owners. That's probably how they get into it, right? So first things I say is you can't spend your money when you're dead, and we all know that. And I'm a super saver, so I have to eat my own words on this stuff, right? So a lot of people work their whole lives to get to this point to when they can afford these things. I don't know if you've ever read the book Die with Zero or anything like that. It has that impact. You think to yourself, well, I'm finally there. I just had this exit. We'll call it 10 million, 20 million, 100 million. And they've been so used to just saving and, flying, economy class. And it's just kind of part of it that it's hard for them to get in the mindset of what it would be like to fly private. And it is luxurious, but for I think more than the luxury of it, it's usually time savings and convenience, right? So I couldn't imagine if I was retired, which I'm not obviously, but if I was and I have two dogs, they come with us everywhere. And unfortunately, you might hear them in the background, and I'll try to keep that out of there. But what happens with that is I couldn't imagine flying. If I had a house in Scottsdale, I'd love to go spend the winters there and golf. I don't want to do the 8-hour drive. I have my wife, I have three kids, two that are home, one soon enough. So that's always changing. But to take two dogs with me, to take a couple friends, it just seems like too much work. One, my wife would never let me fly my dog anywhere in some cargo bay or anything like that. But if you did, the convenience of it is this. So I'm limited on time, and there's very few weekends that I can get, even a 3-day weekend, taking off a Friday and coming back on Sunday. And if I were to try to do that, I would try to work a half day on Friday, and then I would try to jump on a commercial flight to Scottsdale. I'd probably get in. I'd probably go to the airport at 2, leave at 4, get there at 6, get a rental. And then by the time I get to wherever I'm going, I've already spent a half a day of my life trying to get there with a tremendous amount of stress, especially if I was taking dogs and golf clubs and all the other things. So then I do that, and I get down there. I get to enjoy Saturday at my place of residence, and maybe an early Sunday round, and then I have to go through the whole rigmarole to get back. So it's stressful. It's as much stress as it is getting there. When you fly private, the experience starts when you walk up to you drive up to the plane side, or you go into the FBO, and you can arrive 10 minutes before your departure time. You arrive, you got your bags, you got your dog, you've got your kids, your strollers, whatever that you have, you pull up to it. The pilot greets you. They drop all the stuff in. You board the plane, and you're off. You arrive where you're going. I arrive there at 1:50. I'm on the plane by 2. I arrive in Scottsdale at 4. I go straight to a rental car that's plane side as well, and I'm to that house by 5. So I've taken that 8-hour travel window and I've compressed it to 3 or 4. If I do that anytime of the day, I could do that in the morning and play a golf round by noon, right? With no real stress. I mean, literally no real stress. And you can do that. We've done this as well. We've done it in 3 spots. We've skied one day, half day, and you've golfed in California by the afternoon. You can do that as well. And so for that, it's time savings. I'm coming back to that as the main
Yeah.
thing. The first thing is time and convenience. If you can put your whole family versus trying to get 2 people in economy plus and my grandkids in the back, or your 2 dogs, if you could put everybody in a plane and you can do it, and you can take that 4-day vacation and truly make it 4 days or 3 days versus it being more like 1.5 or 2, the money that you spend on it is a fraction of the time that you save and the efficiency that you get. And so a lot of people, when they get in retirement, they have a second home or a third home, or they like to travel and they just haven't ever experienced. And I think once they try that, they rarely, if ever, go back. Right? Private travel isn't for everybody all the time. And as I always said, you like we often a lot of us fly commercially still for longer legs. If there are only 1 or 2 passengers, we still fly commercially often, and same with a lot of our owners. But if you are trying to optimize a trip in your time from a retirement standpoint, a liquidity event, and you want to maximize your time with your grandkids and your kids and your family, there's nothing better to do it. And I think people have found that that's how they want to spend their time in experience which the experience isn't the trip. It starts with the plane. The trip is just part of it. And I think you'll find that often. They'll be like, the plane ride was as exciting as anything else we did on the trip to Hawaii or to, the golf trip or to Lake Powell. I'll tell you a great example. Are you a Lake Powell goer? Do you know much about Lake Powell, Southern
I
Utah?
haven't been in a long time.
Okay. So Lake Powell is a driving event for most people out of Utah. 80% of the lake goers are typically from Utah, right in that area. That's a 7.5 hour drive pulling a boat. And after you spend 7.5 days on the water and in the baking hot sun, the last thing you want to do is drive 7 hours back with screaming kids and everybody's just kind of done. I can tell you, if you change that whole experience by not only flying down, but flying home. Because when you're done, and you get on that plane, you board it, whatever, you get off the houseboat at 12, you're on the plane by 12:30, and you're home in your own house by 3:30. That's a totally different deal. And I think for those people that do things like that, those are the experience I talk about. You can't do it any other way. You can't even do that commercially because nobody flies there commercially. It has to be done private. And so those are the things I think I focus in on. So that's the liquidity event. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting. What I'm really hearing you say is people are buying back time, and that allows the focus to be on the vacation itself. You're not dealing with the headaches of getting there. You actually show up refreshed. You actually have a great time when you're there, and when you're done, you have a quick exit to get home for recovery. And that's the piece that I think people miss when they first initially think about flying privately, because it does feel, maybe if someone's never done it, it does feel a little bit luxurious. But I think the reason they never go back, which is what you're saying, is all the reasons they realize that it becomes practical in a lot of ways. And I have a friend that says, he's older and he's worked very hard his whole entire life. And he said, at this stage, I have more money than time. And so I value time more. And so if he can use what he worked so hard for to buy back time, then he does. And that's really what I think flying privately does, is it buys back precious time and it changes the entire experience of the trip. And that's really what
It
I'm hearing
does.
you say. And you gave such great, perfect examples. And I guess I would ask you, what do you think travelers, private flyers are expecting differently today than they did, say, pre-COVID? Or even 5
Well,
years ago or 6 years,
yeah, I wasn't a common I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have some really wealthy friends, and my brother, again, flies private, and so I've flown private for not all the time, but before quite a bit. I didn't fly a lot prior. I wouldn't say that the industry, like, the experience has changed much. I think people are we had to go through a long period of time about super, what do you call it, sterile environment stuff, and that was a whole that was that no one likes to I mean, we still had to wear masks, our pilots had to wear masks. I mean, it was
yeah. Yes.
all that is a different thing. But so I can't go back too far on that and say that's changed. Here's what I would tell you is the options are greater now than they've ever been before. Like just like almost anything else in life. Like people think to themselves when they think flying private, you're talking about this big, heavy jet, G450, G550, global. And yes, that is flying private at its highest echelon. But that's not it. People fly private all the way down to little 4-person piston planes if you want that, right? Like, and there's operators that do that. Now, we don't play in the really small ones, but there's people that do that. And so you don't have to, what I'm saying, you don't have to go and pay $15,000 an hour for a global to go somewhere and 16 passengers. You can do it now with your 3 buddies that you want to go do a foursome and go play a super unique course like Pebble Beach on a weekend because they have an opening, or you've got a guy that can get you on at Riviera Country Club. Like those are the things that you do now. Now you could do that. You could do that again commercially. It would be some real strategic planning, and last second you may not be able to do it. We get a lot of calls when things fall through, either commercially or life happens,
Mm.
unfortunate life events, death in the family, a major accident, moving people for we've done a lot of flights for people's what do you call it? Like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where you take people like they've never flown private. Private is different than flying commercially. There you can take a turboprop and fly around Lake Powell's shoreline and see that. You can do it in the just different areas that you just never see from 45,000 feet. You can do that. And so I think that's what's changed is your options are plentiful. There's a lot of different ways to do it, which wasn't the case because I was the same way. That's the reason why I got in this. I was like, I want to be able to have my own jet. But I'm like, have your own jet, you have to have millions responsibly, you should have millions of dollars to operate it.
Yeah.
And that's not really that's really not, and by the time I have that or had that, I might be 65 years old and I've already missed my best years. And so when you look at that now, like our goal, my goal, when I said it's Corey, I said, I want to make this kind of like a country club where people, a lot bigger audience could afford it than what they think. And so we do things differently. We do stuff with certain golf clubs where we'll just try to take what would be a 3 hour commute and we'll fly them from one spot to another because commercial won't do that. We have all these ways to do these things that I think people don't even consider when they're doing that. People are so used to jumping in the car, like my wife included, and she'll jump in the car and she'll drive 5 hours to Boise or 6 hours to Boise from Salt Lake. That's not an easy flight anymore. That flight's $800 today if you take it on Delta, and that's a 2 hours before, an hour flight, 2 hours after. You should drive it. That's why people drive it because it's
Yeah.
about the same as you flying commercially. You can do that with us. You could fly that in a day and you can be up there in 1 hour and wherever you're at. You could do two things twice as much in one day and be back home for dinner that you couldn't do in three. And I don't think people recognize that. And I hope people start to look at it if they're business or they are personally in that ballpark. They should look at private as an option. But there's two things I'd say there. One, don't go into it thinking you're going to save money off of a commercial flight ticket.
Yes.
It will not happen. So there's one way. But if you really want, you don't have to jump into fractional ownership either, Mendy. A big part of the biggest segment is charter, right? So just retail charter, one-off charter. You and some friends want to go to Park City, Utah for your ski trip, and you want to jump, and you don't want to lug all your skis and all that stuff. You want to show up with your lady friends, have a great time, enjoy drinks on the way there, land, be to Park City because Salt Lake's so unique. As you know, you can land in Salt Lake City at 8 in the morning and be to the ski resort by the time it opens at 8:45.
Yes.
You can do all that privately. You can't do that commercially or without a 4 o'clock a.m. wake up and all the potential that you have there. So I think if people will start thinking about it that way, that there's way more area, there's way more ways to fly, there's way more ways to own aircraft for all the other reasons, then that's what's changed the most. The execution of the top carriers all do it well, and that's kind of table stakes for what we do. But I think we can do it differently, and I think people, once they dabble in it, I think some it'll fit right into their lifestyle, it'll fit right into their business, and some it just might be a once in a while thing, and that's okay as well. But it's definitely accessible to you, especially if you're in the West and you're in the Rocky Mountain region or you're in California. SkyShare is probably one of, if not the best options for you to use.
Love that you really have so many options in general because a lot of times you see people working in one specific area, but you actually have the charter, the fractional, and the ability to sell me a plane. And so you really can get me through the whole life cycle if I want.
Yeah.
And people end up in different places for different reasons. I'm sure if I'm flying more, fractional seems like the right option versus chartering. And if I just really want to have control of my own plane, I'm sure you guys would manage that for me. You would help me, you would broker the plane, you'd help me find it, you would then take over management of it. And perhaps if I decided that I would let it be used when I wasn't using it, you could do that. So you really have this whole life cycle, and that's a big operation. That is no joke to manage all of that. And you guys have a very specific route in which you fly, I see. So you become very efficient. Your operations are actually quite impressive. And it's probably why you have such a huge growth. I don't know if you care to share that here, but you were telling me your growth rate. First of all, kudos for you for bootstrapping and not taking on any sort of institutional funding or VC backing because that does change the culture and it changes the experience. And it's the harder way to go, which a lot of people don't do. So kudos to you and
Yeah.
your operations are just really tight, I can tell. And so do you care to share your growth
Yeah.
rate?
Yeah. So we've been fortunate, without getting into all the specifics, we've been fortunate there's two honors that we like to, I always say, and I've done them at other companies, is they're kind of publicly facing, and it kind of just, it's more validation for, I think, our employees and what we've been building together for many years. And so Inc. 5000, well known for its recognition nationwide for the fastest growing privately held companies in America. And we have been Inc. 5000 for 5 straight years, which in Inc. 5000, they have a statistic that it's less than 5% of their Inc. 5000 make the Inc. 5000 list for 5 years ever, even 5 consecutive years. So we're fortunate to be in the top 5% of the top 1% of all companies that apply for it. So I think that's one recognition that we like to say, and that just gives you an idea of growth. We'll just call it we're near 500% from back in the 2019 2020 era, and we're still maintaining a clip of about 30 to 40% year over year growth. And then there's a local group called Mountain West Capital 100, which that's kind of the local recognized Inc. 5000, but it's the top 100 fastest privately held companies in Utah for revenue growth. And they do different periods. I think I get them mixed up. One's 5 years and one's 3 years on a look back. And we're also 5 consecutive years for them as well. And I just applied yesterday, and I applied for the sixth consecutive year, which I'm pretty confident we'll see. So that's part of our
You wouldn't happen to be competitive by chance, would you?
super competitive, Mandy. That is my downfall in life.
And your winning strategy.
Yeah, I need a scorecard for validation. That's the finance side of me, and that's ultimately what matters. So it does mean some things. It gets you some recognition, and for us, ideally, it's a peer of people that run their own businesses. These are all entrepreneurs, and it's a perfect segment for them to just see it and go, "What is SkyShare? Right? How can I use this to accelerate my business?" Because they're in that phase. They're in that 5, 10 million, 20 million, 40 million, 50 million, $100 million phases. And so a lot of this is new, and they're navigating new waters just like we are every day for their own business. And a lot of them could severely benefit their company and themselves and their family lives by adding private aviation into part of their solution. Because all of it, as you said, at the end of the day, there's two things we would give anything for. That's health and time. And unfortunately, you can't buy health, not that I'm aware of, but not met that way. And time is something you can buy more of. And that's what we try to tell people is that's the ultimate thing you have. The other stuff is really cool. It's not the luxury. Most people are doing it for time savings and convenience. And if you can do that, and besides a time machine, then I think that's what we say. We're selling time machines. If you can do that, you should look at it. How can you get an extra 12 hours into your productive work week as a CEO, CFO? If you could do that through travel, because a lot of us do have to travel commercially now that we're no longer in the stay at home and work from your camera all the time, you got to get face to face with clients. How can you be more effective? How can you make that more effective for them? That's how we recommend people use the product, or at least look at it. And then some are just straight personal. Spend what you've made. You've worked so hard to do. Enjoy the golf trips. Enjoy the ski trips. Enjoy the mountain biking. Get in a plane with 4 mountain bikes and 3 of your buddies and fly up to Canada and do a trip you've never thought you could do before. Too logistically hard. Do it that way, and you'll never second guess a dime you spend on it. I can say
And
that.
tell me about Corey. I think he's so interesting as well. And I think you two are a perfect match for the business. And I know he was hesitant to take on a partner, and it seems like it's really working out for him. But I'd love to hear more about Corey too. I think he's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
Absolutely. I'd love to share with Corey. Yeah. So Corey, again, we've been friends since the sixth grade. But never business partners. We've always taken different paths in life. Like he wasn't big into school, didn't barely graduate high school, had no interest in college. I never had anything but college and graduate school and stuff on my mind. So we stayed always close because we were close in our personal relationship side. I was there when he met his wife. I was in his line. I was there as the shoulder to cry on when he got his divorce. He was there when I got married. Our kids are the same age. So we have interacted a long time as friends. And then he would call me as I was kind of on a corporate trajectory with GameStop and some of my prior employers. And he would always call me for referrals for my product. And I was like, Corey, I wish I could not only give you ones, but I'm still young and I don't have the money to buy a fractional share, but I'll keep you in mind. I kind of watched Corey as he not only learned to fly with my brother, then he was kind of doing this deal. And I was always kind of down the more, I'll call it the safer route, the more like school, executive CEO route. And then this is how it was gonna go. And Corey was always like, what's the next business idea? What do I love to do and how can I do it? So he was in cars. I bought my first car from him when I bought my first new car at 18 years old, just graduating, going to college. I had a good job selling wireless phones back before people were using wireless as a day-to-day thing, including pagers back in the day. So I sold that to Corey, and Corey was in cars. He sold me the car. Corey started then, he was a great salesman. He became a branch manager at a very young age. We'll call it 19 or 20. He was the general manager for a local set of dealerships for a while, and then he started his own business. And when he started his own business, he started his own dealership. That went good until it didn't, like a lot of partnerships do and industries do. The 2008 crash caused almost every car dealership to, face bankruptcy or closing doors, and they did the same thing. And during that split, Corey ran a little bit more of a wilder lifestyle too. And so he not only had some challenges personally, but he also had some professional ones as the partnership split. And I think I don't know all the story because I wasn't a part of it, but it didn't end well, let's just say. To some of the friends that I knew well through Corey and friends of mine, or let's say they don't really talk to this day. Like it was a bad breakup. And during that, even on the personal side, Corey was going through a divorce. That kind of split those deals. And since Corey's like, well, I'm kind of rebuilding myself. He's kind of just did another podcast for a different topic, but it was about kind of rebuilding himself. He kind of said, well, life's kind of I wouldn't call it the lowest point because that's not, he still had his health and everything else. But how can I do something that I really love? And he's like, I love planes. I love helicopters. I want to get into that. So he just decided with no experience at all. And I mean, no experience at all. He started to learn how to fly. He's always been a good aviator. He's a great boat captain. He's really good at behind the wheel. Super calm. Nothing rattles him. That's a great person. That's not me, right? Super not calm. They got to be. Everything has to have a structure to it. And so anyway, Corey got into just buying and selling planes, and he was just peddling planes that he could find business for. And it was just really a mom and pop kind of brokerage for the first so many years, 3 or 4 years. Then he started getting a little bit of industry knowledge and other repeat buyers. And it kind of maintained a business for him pretty well for the first 10 years. And that's pretty much what he did. But then, like for most things with Corey, is it wasn't big enough for him then. Like, you can only sit by and sell so many planes. He wanted to get into something bigger. But to do that, you have to have credibility in the industry. So you needed to have more than just like, hey, I know I can do this. You have to have operated a bigger plane. You have had to bought and sold one before. And that was tough. And the aviation industry and the brokerage side between 2010 and 2017 were kind of like lost years. It wasn't like a super busy transactional period. And so that's when Corey's like, well, how can I grow the business? And that's where fractional kind of popped up in his mind. I told you he was on a flight with a competing party that was chartering a plane back from Africa or somewhere in that area. And so they were on like a 7-day flight on a PC-12 or some smaller plane that came back. And so we had a lot of time to just to chat about it. And he was a hired pilot to just kind of sit right seat again for the longer flights. And started talking about one of their competing products, but they were all East Coast. They weren't servicing the West. And Corey's like, there it is. That's what we have to do. Now, how do you do it? Because you just can't say you have it. We're providing a service with multi-million-dollar planes. Pilots are some of the highest salaried positions in the entire country. Like all of this stuff is like, well, how do you do it? And that's when that idea started. And he's a great idea guy. He's brilliant at that. He's an excellent aviator. Then the question is how can I get someone to help me operate it? Because I can't do all of this and do all of this. And I think the only reason why they came back is he'll tell you the story and he'll say he reached out to me with the intention of me knowing that I'd probably say no, but he was hoping I would say yes. And he kept saying, you're going to fall in love with it. You're going to fall in love with it. And I do love aviation. Everybody loves planes, private planes, commercial planes. They're wonders of the world. It's great. But I really fell in love. I've always loved the business of it, the challenge, the scoreboard, and that's really kind of my driver at the end of the day is the challenge of it. We've grown to we have 170 employees now. When I joined, we were around 25. We have 80 full-time pilots. When we joined, we had less than 10. So we've become a big player in that. We do development programs, Mendy, which is really cool. We have our own in-house PC-12 PDP program, pilot development program, where we're not only we're licensed to do that. We have the certification to do that. We have the insurance to back it. We can take a pilot that really can't find opportunities in the space that only has 800, 1200, 1500 hours and is just trying to get a job for anybody anywhere in the country that we can put them in and we can develop them all the way into the left seat of a PC-12 up to a CJ2. And we just did our 2 newest graduates in the last year. Our first 2 PDPs we hired a year and a half ago are now flying our PC-12 and our CJ2s. And so those are the great parts, right? The careers that we have. Most of our pilots that are now flying our G450 and our G200s started with us when they were CJ2 or PC-12 captains. And that's over a short period of time, 5 years. We've taken them from a light jet, which if they were at a commercial airline, they'd still be sitting right seat for 5 or 10 more years. And we've advanced people all the way from a right seat or left seat in the small turboprops or jets all the way up into the left seat of the heaviest jets and the biggest private aircraft in the world, which is really, really cool.
It's very smart, actually, also from a business perspective, because there's a shortage of pilots. So it's very smart that you can feed your own system, your
100%.
own ecosystem, and you can train them the way you want to train them. And that's actually every time you talk about the operations side, Tommy, I'm like, this guy is smart, which tells me you're just getting started
Yeah.
because
No, I'm
because
not.
you
I'm
you
not the
really
smart one.
are. Well, I think you're very good at executing operation, and I think he's very visionary, but I do think you see things operationally that he doesn't, and that's why you guys are matching. He's the big vision that's going to push you out of your comfort zone, and you're the operator that's going to ground him. And so it's a perfect match. And but operationally, you're going to see things that he may not see. He generally, I mean, he probably does, but there's probably stuff that you see too. And that's actually super smart because there's such a shortage. Every time you talk, I'm like, okay, they're going bigger and bigger. This is not, they're, you really, I can tell you guys are just getting started. These are things that most operators don't think of. And this is really feeding your own ecosystem and making sure that you
It
have your
is.
pilots.
It
And
is.
it's cool. And from a heartfelt perspective, it's cool to help develop those pilots. And I'm sure they love
Yeah.
it and they have that opportunity. So it's very cool. I love that for you guys. What do you think? Why do you think that a member or why does someone buy a charter with you? Why not? We talked about, people just are the fractional side. We talk about people chartering and taking flights as they need, but why am I buying a fractional with you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, most charter brokers, they don't have their own, they're not operators. They're selling someone else's products, right? Their,
They're
their planes,
brokers.
their inventory. Yeah. And we're one of those, like many. And so again, coming back to our fractional product, I think why people would buy ours is there's a couple things, right? When you get so big, and you're right, most people have taken on private equity, I mean, largely because it's capital intensive. It's very, very heavy of a lift to do. And so I'm going to tie this in a couple answers as well, because when you were mentioning some of those things, I was saying a lot of it's come out of necessity of figuring out how you do more with less. That's how you bootstrap a company together, right?
Yep.
And so that's ingrained in our roots. Like we can't pay $15,000 during the pandemic, $30,000 signing bonuses to a pilot that has no experience. So we had to be like, what can we offer? We could offer living in Salt Lake's a great place to live, one of the safest, best economies, awesome place to live if you're outdoorsy. Like, how can we package up these things to give you something different from an employee standpoint? So now I'm going to answer your question. When you talk about fractional ownership, the same thing happened. It's like, well, we can't compete with NetJets and FlexJet with the heavy jet. We don't have the inventory. We haven't been doing it for 20 years. We don't have hundreds of millions of dollars of credit line draw. So how can we do that? And again, that's where we came back to our focus and saying, and even if we did have that, our unique proposition are those three things. So one, if you're a fractional owner or you're considering fractional ownership, one reason why a lot of people buy is to be an ownership position, being on title, which gives you bonus depreciation in the current environment, right? So bonus depreciation for those that don't know, and I'm not an accountant, but I just tell you the general sense of it is basically you can take a business asset like this used for business and you can fully depreciate the purchase price in year one. And so if you had a liquidity event and you just have this $8 million, $5 million, $2 million, $50 million tax problem, there is very few things you can buy in the $1 million category, not only quickly, instantaneously, with ease, and get a benefit out of it at the same time, a benefit that most would love to have. And so purchase beginning asset of purchase or purchase of asset is one of the things, and the bonus depreciation, that's for a lot of them is part of the driving force. So when you ask why fractional, why would that? Now everybody can do that part if they wanted to. The second part of that is if you are in the 10 Western states and you are looking for an operator, most of them, many have abandoned it. If you called most of the major operators and said, I live in Billings, Montana, that's where my ranch is at, will you take me on as a client? Most of them would tell you no, we won't service there. Or, yeah, we'll service you, but your rate's twice as much as someone else's. Now, it has to be more because the operation to service a person in Billings is more than someone that's in Salt Lake City when they're coming there, right? But in general, most of them either won't get an opportunity or an offer, and we will. We service those with pleasure. We love that area, and it feeds our other products. So when we get an owner that's up in Billings, Montana, and we fly a plane to reposition from Salt Lake City base after whatever up to get them for their trip, that provides an open leg for someone to jump on in our open jet program. and go up to Billings because they want to go fishing and they would love to avoid the 8-hour drive up to Billings, Montana from Salt Lake City, right? And so that opens up that opportunity to allow someone to first look into private aviation. That's a great program to talk about as well. But that's a feeder for that reason to say, can you experience it? It also opens up an opportunity for us to sell that as a charter. So we can now run that and get to the operators that are in the area that don't have operations or operators in this area and say, hey, we're running this trip to Billings in 7 days. Do you have a client or can you sell this open? And so it feeds the ecosystem and what we do. But back to the fractional purchase, we're going to service an area that most people don't service. And they definitely won't service it with options from a Pilatus PC-12 all the way up to a G450. None of them do that. Some will do one. Some will do some part of that. Certain areas like Jackson Hole, Wyoming is the only spot in Wyoming, or Sun Valley, Idaho. But no one will service you out of Boise. And they're not going to service you with a PC-12 one day and a Citation XL or a G450 the next. And so that's super unique. That's super challenging too, though, because it's easy to price model things when they're all in the same class. When you have 8 owners, it's really easy to understand what that empty leg is going to cost, and how much is this going to cost, and how much is the fuel burn, and how much are the engine programs, and what if you break down and you have a maintenance event? What is the potential downside? It's really difficult when, Mendy, you can call me and in 2 days from now, 3 days from now, you can say, hey, I want to fly a G200 and you have never flown one before, so I don't have any profile on you to do that. And then the next day you're telling me you want to fly a PC-12. And so that's the challenge that I spend most of my sleepless nights trying to figure out, is like, how do you cost average it? How do you make certain things happen? And so what we figured out in that is the jets all kind of run in a similar kind of category, a light jet to a mid-sized jet to super mid. They all have two engines. They burn a lot more fuel than a turboprop, and the 450 is a whole different class. And about 2 years ago, I had the idea with Corey. I said, I think there's a big segment of customers that want the PC-12 and only the PC-12 because of efficiency or for whatever that is, but they love the idea of having the jet options, but you have to pay for that. To have that option, you have to have some type of service requirement to it, right? Because you can't jump from a PC-12 to a G200 to super mid without any price difference. When we had it all together 5-6 years ago, it was good because it was nice and simple as one product, but everybody was kind of sharing the cost. And some people were, I wouldn't say getting the short end of the stick, but they kind of would if they were flying a smaller plane that didn't cost as much to operate. But they had the option to fly the G200. And they had some customers just using the G200, and they were probably paying too little for what they were actually using the majority of the time. So by sectioning that off, that allowed us to bring another price point to the market that was about 30% lower than anybody else already there. And so that's how we did that. And so when I say that back to why fractional, that's the answer of it. One, the way we operate is unique. Buying assets is one advantage, and we use used assets, so you don't have to go as steep out of pocket to do the asset purchase as you will with any other operator. And then two is the options, which gives you can do a PC-12 only program. You could do a jet program, which includes the PC-12, or you can do this SFX Plus program, which includes our G450 and every plane below it. And you can even do one of each. So you don't have to just do all in one or whatever. You can go, I'm going to use this G450 for my longer business flights and for the big trips. And I'm going to also buy a PC-12 because I have my ranch in Wyoming and I like to go to Scottsdale to golf, and that's going to work perfectly. So you can do that as well. And we have multiple owners that have done exactly that. They've done 2 different shares, 2 different ownership positions for that exact reason. So they can maximize it for the most value that you can get. And so that's what we say. We always say, fly bigger, spend less, fly more, spend less, because I think we deliver that in fractional in whichever way you want to see it. You can fly a G450 on our program as the same price you could fly a Challenger on our competitors' programs. Totally different planes. That's a super mid versus a stand-up cabin ultra long range jet or heavy jet. And that's our proposition. So when you're looking at those things, it's hard for me to say, and I'm biased, but it's hard to not consider SkyShare as a leading candidate for fractional purchasing or anything in retail charter. Or if you want to broker a plane, we broker more PC-12s and as many planes as most brokers do. And it's because our clients trust us. They've been to it. A lot of our clients that buy planes have been in our fractional program first, right? And a lot of our fractional program clients were already plane owners, and they've decided they either a business change, and so they've either scaled down or their needs have changed and they wanted more options, and so they've gone the other directions. To your original comment way back when is, will you do all those things? It's because we really want to believe that we're going to take a customer through their entire private aviation lifestyle. They want to start an open jet or retail charter and then move to fractional ownership. That's great. If they want to go into their ownership, we'll manage it for them. We'll buy it for them. We'll manage it for them. If they want to then sell that and go back down into something else, we'll do that. And we've had a lot of clients do that full circle, if not once, but twice. And we see that continue to feed the cycle.
It's so interesting, and I do think it's rare what you're offering on the fractional side, and that's been a lot of the issue for people is, if they own a plane or they do fractional, they're still purchasing supplemental lift, and so they're trying to solve that puzzle, and then it's more to manage, more to think about, more to do, more programs, more this person over here does this, but I need this over here, and so I love that you guys manage virtually the entire life cycle for the client, but also that if I'm in your fractional program, I can really move between planes because sometimes I'm going from here to New York, let's say, and I need something longer range, or sometimes that's overkill from California to Salt Lake, or sometimes I've got six people and I don't need a big plane to take, 3 hours for
Yeah.
six people, and I'm burning a
Yeah.
ton of fuel doing it. So
Yeah.
I love that you have that. I think it's such a unique value proposition. And what I said to you is you've really thought through the operational side. And, some of it, I think every entrepreneur, especially when they're bootstrapping, it's such a gift because it forces you to think creatively. And sometimes you solve things that you might not have otherwise if you just had unlimited capital to burn to grow. And I
Yeah.
think it forces you to get creative, and it can be such a gift. And I see you've really taken that gift and done quite well. And it's fun to see. And I guess just I would say for people who don't know, talk about the open program and repositioning. Like, some people may
Yeah.
not know what repositioning means.
Yeah. So repositioning in the fractional world or the ownership world is right. You're taking people to a destination. So you're essentially either dropping them off or picking them up. And that leg is going empty to do that. Right. So when you're flying in the private world, we call that an empty leg. So, you know, Mendy's an owner. She's flying to Park City to go on her ski trip. So she jumps on a plane from California out to Park City. Now that plane would normally come back to base if that's to call that base. So that's going to now come from Park City straight back to California. Well, how many people are on the Park City slopes at that same time that live in California that have just done that trip and would love to fly back private? And so what happens of that is we're like, there it adds complexity because you just can't in private aviation, just like one air carrier or a commercial carrier, you can't just jump on a plane because you want to, right? You have to you have to do weight and balance. You have to get through approvals now. Almost all those have to go through a birth, like a date of birth and a name check for do not fly lists, and all those same things apply that way. But that plane's going back empty. I mean, it literally is going back empty. And so we thought to ourselves to say, if we could create a program, which is what we call Open Jet, where we could offer it as kind of an entry level to fractional flying or ownership flying, private flying, could it one, spread the word to more people that they may not be the ones that are in the position to buy one or can or buy a fractional or whatever, but often we all have friends that can or in a little bit different position or better off position financially or in their business. And just so few people have experienced it. Like I told you, the stat of it was is even after the pandemic with the 35% peak in 2020, 2021, 22 from pre-pandemic levels, that only 10% of the people that could afford to fly private have flown private. 10% of the US population, right? So 90% of people out there could probably do it, but they just don't have any idea that they can do it, how to do it, where to do it, who should do it. Like, and so that's what we're here for. Like, we're going to solve those problems for you. So coming back to the open jet is we have 100 right now, and that's always growing as the fleet grows, the number of empty legs grow. But we have 100 empty legs a month that are flying right now to all destinations all over the US, mostly from Utah, Arizona, Southern California, but because of that travel triangle that people do depending on the season. And they're going one way or the other because they've just dropped somebody off, they've just picked somebody up and it's going empty. And you can jump on those legs if you're in our membership program, unlimited number of legs. It's an annual program from your start date, 1 year from that period. At $15,000, you can fly our turboprops all the way up to our G200s You can fly unlimited number of legs that you can get on. Now, you're not the only owner, so there's a handful of owners. There's 70 plus owners right now, and the members that can use that. And so it is somewhat just like flying standby for commercial. It's kind of like a first come, first serve when those are offered up. And some look for them and know what they're looking for. And others are just looking for that unique opportunity. They're like, oh, well, gosh, the G200's going to Seattle. I'll take that one. I don't have any plans, but I'll grab my wife and the kids and we'll go up to Seattle for the weekend and I'll figure my way back. You can sometimes connect the open legs back, if you're super flexible. But often people use it, Mandy, if I have a home in St. George, which I do, or if I had a home in Southern California, those trips are going like weekly. Sometimes during seasonal periods, I'll go daily. And if I had a home and my whole thing is about just getting there and I could just jump on a flight and grab my dog and, whatever and jump out there and then decide when I want to come home. There's not a better way and a more costive way to fly. And so typically a single leg on like a PC-12 would cost around ten to $15,000. Let's call it in the Western, like to California or not. So just for getting one or two flights, you would pay off that membership. And we have some that have done two, and we've had some of our best users have done it 13 plus times in the last 7, 8 months. And that's pretty awesome. So that's a really cool program, but it's really a feeder program and an experience program to get people familiar with SkyShare, one, and two, what flying private could look like and feel like. So hopefully someday they become a full-time consumer.
Yeah, I can see where that would be so interesting and such a great way for people to experience it, or if they had a lot of flexibility. As we wrap up, Tommy, what do you think people should know about SkyShare? What do you think is the one thing you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah. I think the one thing is one, I just want you to remember, and we take a lot of pride in the name. It's a trademark that we put a lot into. I want people to know what SkyShare is. And I think we've gone through all these series of growth. People originally put us as a brokerage when it was CB SkyShare. We won't go into that for this conversation. But so that's what we were known for. Then we took a long time for people to get to recognize us as a fractional provider. We had to build our own certificate and all that. So then we spent all this time for years, 2019, all the way through 2023, 24, with people recognize us as a true player in the fractional space, which I think we've done through all publications and validations. That's been done. But what people have all forgot is we do so much more than most. And so what we really want people to know is we want people to know that we're their guide in the private aviation journey, wherever you are in that. If you've never flown private before and you have no idea what to expect, come and see us. We'll walk you around planes. We'll get you comfortable with what a cab feels like, what it's like to fly that way. If you are interested in, can I buy a plane and use it for my business? Can I buy it personally? And here's how I want to do it. And could I offset it with revenue generation? Or I don't want anybody in my plane. I just want you to manage it for me. What do I do with pilots? If you really have no idea what you want or what you're doing, reach out to us. That's ultimately what I ask you. Reach out to SkyShare. Look us up at skyshare.com. You can find us in about almost any major publication that is in aviation. But if you just look us up and reach out to us, we want to be the guide for our consumers in whatever journey that is. If that is just that one time you have that trip planned, you want to do that special 50th birthday for your wife, or you want to do something that's different, reach out to us. We'll broker that entire thing for you. We'll set up the trip. We'll put you on what's the correct plane. We'll walk you through the pricing and the passenger counts, and we'll make that super simple for you. And if you're in that position where you're considering buying either whole plane, fractional ownership, I would ask you to just look us up and give us a chance. A quick, what we call a 15 to 30-minute intro, where we want to learn more about what you're trying to solve in your life, and let us try to put together the right program for you. And I think we're one of the few that can do that. So we can do anything from OpenJet, which nobody else, not very few do, if anybody else does it, all the way up until your full ownership. And we can do almost anything in private aviation. So when you think of SkyShare, think of all of it. If you need management, whatever, please give us a call and give us a chance to tell you why I think we're unique. And we'd love to actually show you in a demo or other ways you can experience our products.
And I would say a good reason to call you is it's very, as you mentioned, it's a very fragmented industry and it's very confusing if people have never done it before. And even if they have done it before, there's a lot to wade through. And because you guys really offer the open leg to the charter, to the fractional, to buying the plane, you guys really are, if nothing else, a great resource for somebody and can probably save them a ton of time in their research because otherwise they're going to call all these people individually and it's going to make their head spin.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really fragmented and there's a lot of people in it and there's a lot of different ways you can fly. So I think one really good reason someone should call you in addition to, your proven track record is you can really talk them through all the options and really give them a good starting point. And so I love that because that's a rarity that someone does as much as you guys do. So I appreciate you being on. Thank you for your insight, your time. And I guess one last question, if we can leave on a entrepreneurial personal journey, what would you say your big aha moment was in this business?
My big aha moment was, so I was in retail for 20 years and retail was 24/7. I mean, right? We were open on Black Friday. I mean, it was a constant. And I thought to myself, my next job wouldn't be 24/7. Unfortunately, private aviation is the exact opposite of not 24/7. So my big aha moment was, it's actually, like you just said, it's a super complex business. It's the most difficult business that I've ever operated, and I've done a lot of stuff from scuba diving equipment to what mobile cells to cannabis companies to a lot of different things
And
I've
big
worked
companies.
with. Yeah, and big ones. And it's difficult because the variables in private aviation, when you talk about weather and planes and pilots and FAA and but like it's extremely complex. And so that was my aha moment. Was I was looking for a challenge, and I typically was like, oh, 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be done with that. And then almost 7 years into it now, going into 7 years, and the challenges are no less than what they were, partially because of growth, partially because of change. But that was my aha moment. Was I really enjoy this because of the challenge of it. It's extremely difficult. People think there's big dollars and there's a lot of big equipment and big investment, but the margins are really, really thin. And so it takes a super unique team of people to execute the plan. Like I said, when we come back to, we have a lot of great people. Corey and I just started it, and we jump on podcasts and we try to still continue to push the business forward. But we've got a lot of great team members that really make it work, day to day. And that's really the way it's going to continue to grow, is by continuing to infuse new insight, people with experience as well. Because this is also a space you can't come in with no experience. I know I did, but I'm not flying the planes, and I'm not doing the operations. We've hired great people to do that stuff. And so that's what I would say, is I leave them with, it is a hard business to make you in. A lot of people see it and they want it. It's a shiny thing. It's a luxury service, and it's tough, and it takes a great team of people, super committed, and team that's going to execute, and know that we have a one thing that was being solutions focused, because the environment every single day changes. Every morning the plane up list is changing, and during the day it changes, and the pilots change, and the PTO, and you just can't call in for PTO and have somebody off the street fly your plane. Like, that doesn't work. So logistically, it's a super challenge, and I think if anybody's up for that, I think it's a great space to be in. I would tell you also that being a pilot, being in this space in private aviation, has got tremendous upside. It's been as stable as anything in transportation for the last 5 years, and it's still going on the up and up. 2 year backlogs for all the OEMs on their new aircraft. So I think there's a really good run here, 5, 10, 15 more years, and everybody in the food chain is benefiting from it. All the MROs that do the service, the fuel providers, the pilots, the cabin attendants, the sky operations teams, the maintenance teams, they all have a benefit, and we need more people in the space. So I invite you to join the same journey that I'm on. Even if you've never done it before, jump on in, and I think you'll find that you'll love it, and it's pretty hard to leave once you're here.
Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate you sharing so much.